What's going on, guys? SmartHelping.com here. It's 4:44 p.m. July 5th, 2017. I've been working on this thing, stuck on it all day, man. I thought it was only going to take me less than an hour, and I was jumping in my inventory model and really had to make some updates and changes. Um, Primarily because we have to figure out what is the cost of the things that are sold in order to figure out what the actual change in inventory value is. So this was not easy. A lot of logic, a lot of updates. So the great thing is now everything works. And you can have this, so input card is still the same. You pick your SKU ID. I've got over, I think you could do up to about 1100. Excel would probably handle 2 to 4,000 before it starts getting kind of slow. And that's also the summaries are going across 3 years on a monthly basis. So again, if you were doing an annual basis, then you could probably have, I don't know, maybe 15,000 SKUs or 12,000 without an issue. Could only be 3 columns worth of data. Right now it's going out for 36 columns, which is obviously 3 years worth. And so there's limits and restrictions because Excel is a nice tool, but there's some things there to pay attention to. So we pick the SKU, you pick the date that the transaction is happening on. You enter a negative if you're selling inventory, or a positive if you've bought inventory or made it, or you're trying to enter inventory into, or trying to enter things into inventory. Then you put the cost or the price per item. So if you're selling it, what are you selling your items for? What's the net price per item? If you're buying inventory or creating it, what's your net cost per item on that date? And those will change. Obviously, the same product might cost less in the future or more. You might sell it for more or less in the future. So all of that's taken into account in all the logic for the monthly summaries. So once you populate the amount, quantity, and the price, you'll get a total cost here. And then there's also, we've got about 11 other attributes here you could add to the transaction if you want to do some other tracking outside of what the current logic is doing. Right now, the logic is supposed to just tell you very specifically on a individual product SKU and consolidated basis for any given month, how much inventory have you entered in, what the value of the inventory that has left is based on what the cost was when it was entered in, and then what's the revenue that you've made from selling these things out of inventory, and then what's the difference of the revenue less the actual cost that the inventory was when you entered it. And so we've got to do some weighted averages, which is basically we have to get the weighted average cost for an item right here. We have to, first of all, it needs to be dynamic enough so you can actually pick a start and end month, and based on the start and end month, it will define all of these things. So your weighted average could be different. Let's see, I know it'll be different here in the data I have. If I put in 9, this goes up to 17. That's because in our database, look at, in August, the price per item was $5 entering into inventory for product 2, and now we go to product 2 in September, and we did 25 units. We entered in inventory at $17. So since we've now changed the date, it's not including the first one. Our weighted average is 17. Now, if I were to put in another date, let's say December of 2017, product 2. Let's try to raise this even higher. Let's say we bought 25 more items at $36. Hit our button. Now watch. Oh, it's up to 26.50. And the reason why it's not exactly, obviously it's not going to be 36, is because now it's doing a weighted average between, well, you bought 25 at $36, you bought 25 at, for product 2 for $17. So now the weighted average cost of that item from this date range is $26.50. Now you probably are going to want to keep this date range fairly broad unless there's significant changes in your costs. But obviously it's granular enough to go by a day-by-day basis. Obviously you're going to want this to be like over the course of at least a quarter, probably a year. Let's put this back to 1. And now you can see our cost is changed at $15.75 instead of, I think it was $9 before. And that's because I've added that new inventory item, and our end date's 2019, so it's going to be included. So now that is affecting that. It's also affecting the total inventory value. Other columns here, we just have, this is a simple calculation. It's just between these dates here. What is the total amount of inventory that's been entered for each product? What's the total quantity of inventory that's been sold for each product? Again, based on these start and end dates. Then what's the balance? So obviously between those dates, you do the amount entered minus the amount sold, and there's your balance of quantity. Then if you take the weighted average cost, again between those date ranges, and multiply it by the balance, well, there's your inventory value. And this number, 491.25, which I just have a total calculation here, it's just the summing up F and summing up D, and we can see our total inventory value is $491, and we have 45 separate units inventory. So this 491.25, if it includes all these dates, and our monthly summary includes all these dates, the amount of that amount should end up being the same for the ending inventory balance in dollars. Because this is another monthly summary that's doing the same thing, but it's giving you a monthly change in value, because this is kind of an overall broad summary. So if you want to see what your inventory is changing month to month by dollar amount, look at this. So we start here, and this is all on cost basis. So, or it doesn't matter what the product is selling for, this is going to determine the value of the product you're selling based on the cost that it was to buy it, or to enter when it was entered into inventory. So you can see here, 491.25. 491.25, perfect. Those numbers should match, and they do, and that's splendid. And you can see August it was at 787 because we entered that much in. September starting balance 787. Then we actually sold some inventory off. The value of that inventory that was sold was 255. Or actually, we sold and bought some. So the net effect, this is the net effect of inventory. So actually we raised inventory up to $255. By $250, we got to $1,000. And you can see that's, if we go to our database in September, yeah, we bought $425 worth here, $18 worth here. We did sell this, but we can't just say, well, we sold $250 worth, because for product 2, our cost is not $25 a unit. That's just what we sold it for. Our cost is, $17 here on 25 units and $5 here on 50. Now we're not matching the exact, specific unit that was bought. We're doing the weighted average measure, which is generally accepted accounting principle, or is GAAP compliant by using a weighted average. Just they want to make sure, if you're doing that, you got to make sure you do it consistently. So that is our cost of. So now our cost when this sells out is not 250. It is going to be 10 times what's our weighted average for product 2 for that time frame, $15.75. Our actual cost we're saying is going to be $157.50. Now, you net that against what was actually bought. So September, we've got some product 2 things. So we've got 25 at 17, and then we've got for product 4, 15 at $1.25. Net effect of that, $286.25. I think I did the math right there. $236.25. Net monthly change $255. Let's break it down. So $18.75 was for product 4. We got that number. This is product 4. Product 2 should be, oh sorry, that's why. It should be 25 times the weighted average, not just the 17, because we got to account for this August purchase, which will change it. Let's try that. Now, yep, there we go. So you net up that, this one, and this one. So this is basically the net effect based on the weighted average of each product. And you're at 255 here. 255 is the net change. So that's net. That's including all in and out, everything. Your net value of the inventory is now 1,042. And then you could see I made that big. I did that big 50 or 60 unit sale in December. So that's going to go, and it's not obviously going to be 50 a unit. It'd be the weighted average for the period. And it'll be 60 times what, 1575? Let's see here. Let me make sure I'm doing my math right. And this is why this was so complex to get right, but I'm happy we got to a good spot. Right, 945, but then we also had 25 coming in of product 2, so this is going to have to net out. And it should be, what's that, 550, 125. And oh, look at that, 550, 125. All for product 2. So you can see that's the straight up logic that's happening from the inventory. And that's how it's getting represented on a monthly basis. Okay, so that works. Now, one interesting thing, so you might say, well, what if I want to change the average cost of an individual item to be different rather than on an aggregated basis? Well, let me see if I did this here. We're going to have to go to the P&L. On the P&L, you can actually pick your date ranges for each product, and that's going to affect what your cost of the item sold is. So if I go to product 2 and I change this to 10 or 9, my cost was actually higher from September of 17 to January of 18. And based on that, I'm actually losing money on the revenue I collected on that sale. And you can see here's another one. There's the December transaction. But this is aggregating what's happening across all SKUs. And then giving you this figure is going to be this figure is going to be, we only need one column here because it's just saying, you know, pick your date range, and that's going to be your average cost. You don't, because obviously costs go across many months, so it doesn't make sense to try to run this formula across every single column. It's just better you can set your month range here, and that's going to change your cost. So that is getting multiplied by the weighted average cost per unit is getting multiplied by the amount of units that are sold for each product SKU. You can see that coming in there, and these go all the way down. The formula's all the way to the bottom. And you'll note you only have to enter the products one time, right here in yellow, and then they proliferate across the model. Let's see, I'm trying to think if there's anything else. So your monthly, your P&L monthly, this will vary. So say I just changed this to 9/1/17. Let me put it back to January. That change does not change on here, and that's because these summaries, and same with the monthly, is going to be. Let me see. Where's my VLOOKUP? Yeah, it's on general. Is going to be based on whatever the average weighted average cost is in this column, and this column is doing a calculation. Let's see. It's doing the calculation based on these two dates. So obviously if you change dates here on a single product, it's not going to change the date over here for that product. Now I mean technically we could have that logic if you wanted it. You know, that's a change and it wouldn't take me long to do. If you were to purchase the model, I could just do it for you. But you'd have to bring in these two cells over here, make two columns with these cells, and then just reference whatever's in here. And then the formula would then pull that cell reference for each product, and then you could have a different date range for every single product SKU. Now the thing with that is it's not, you know, in 99% of the cases it'll probably be fine if you're just using one date range for everything. And you can just update it. And this goes out 3 years in time, and then once you get let me see here. So once the 3 years is up, you're just going to have to start a new spreadsheet. But you can allocate or aggregate all of your inventory figures up, and let me think how you would do this. You would have to, let's see, what would we have to do? If you did not want to reset your inventory. So, I mean, really, all you'd have to do here is enter your, for the summaries, that's all that would be important, is enter your starting amount in the first month plus whatever happens in this first month of the new spreadsheet. So that would, and then everything else would just keep going on as it were before, and you'd get, you know, your monthly changes. Let's see. Here you could just put a starting balance for the beginning inventory, so this would just be the ending balance of the previous spreadsheet here, and then perfect. Look at this. You can actually, so I can just do, so this column itself is going to be plus this. So you will act, whatever happens in the first column here is actually going to include whatever is over in column C. And column C will be your ending balances per the last spreadsheet. So everything can start off the value, just for value tracking purposes going forward, can start off from what it was, and you could see, well, this was that value, each product, you can see what each product's value was per the previous sheet. Let's see what else we have to update. So quantity entered. Now this, you could just pull whatever relevant inventory from your the first 3 years and paste it into the new sheet, and that'll give you these figures, and you could just adjust your dates according to what you want to aggregate here. And then all that we have to update when you change spreadsheets, and that's just for the purpose of Excel not getting too busy with one sheet. I mean, really, we could probably extend this over another for 5 total years instead of 3. But really, you just need to track the balances. And then your data, you can just repaste in your old database right into here. Everything will be the same, obviously, because you just, you have the original template of this that I'm sending you, and then you just can create a new template for, every 3 years. And all you got to do is update your date here. So you'd put it, this would be, if we're ending on December of 19, this would be January of 2020. And we've got our running balances here. Like I said, for the purpose of keeping track of your unit balances of everything, let's see, we got to make a space here, but you can put starting balance. Same thing, and then this would just be equal that plus the balance you enter, which would be from the previous. And then same thing here. This would just be whatever the unit balance is of every product ID from the previous 3 years. Enter it there, and then this will just add in that from whatever it comes up with for the first month. And that's it. And now you've now transferred all the data from the first 3 years to the next 3 years, and you can still capture any weighted average costing that you want, because you don't want to reset that. You want your historical, so you can query back to your historicals with this as far back as you want to go, and then you still have your updated monthly summaries based on any balances of all of these items for the count dollar amount. P&L monthly would then just work the same exact way, but you would just change your start date and then the date range that you want to query your weighted averages, and that's it. And then you get your gross profit. Now, one reason why you might want to update is if you have significant changes in your historical pricing and you no longer want to include certain things in the weighted average in order to figure out what your actual cost of goods sold is. Then you have the flexibility to do it on a per product basis here. And you know what? We really should have that here too, now that I'm thinking about it. So let's just add it in. This will be the last thing, and then I'm going to show you the well, actually, shoot, I shouldn't have added it in there, because I've got VLOOKUPs going to column F. Okay, make sure everything's still intact. Yep. Looks good. And you can check your inventory. So right now it says we got 45 units. Do we really have 45? Well, yeah, it should be the sum of that. All the units you've put in and sold out, it should be the net of that, which it is 45. Visuals. So this is 2 visuals. One's the dollar amount of your inventory change, and one's inventory level by month. And the bars is just saying what the net change is, and then the line is your running balance. So that's a pretty good visual. But let's add in, let's just move these over. I don't think that'll mess anything up. So we're actually not going to need these anymore. But let me just watch this. So we'll move this over here. Start date. End date. And this is if, you know that going forward in time, the historical pricing is not really going to be accurate, which can happen over whatever amount of time. So you don't want to, if you've sold all the inventory out, like you've bought inventory of a SKU, a year and a half ago, and you've already sold it out. You've gone through your inventory cycle on that unit at least one time. The pricing for that first initial purchase is now irrelevant. Well, you need to change the beginning date that you're going to average out that price. So this is where you're going to do that. And so you enter your start and end date. That you want the data to be for. And I'm just thinking, do we want to have all of this or just the weighted average? Go based on that. Probably everything. So these will define. Good, that doesn't change. So these will define when this data is being queried from. And now we don't need this. We can still keep our summary of inventory. That will still be accurate. Oh man, I can't believe I've spent 4 hours on this frickin' thing. Alright, undo this, undo that. Total inventory count. This. Okay, now I just got to remove the lock on, let's see, G1 or G2 and H2. So those are now going to move down. G2 and H2. Update that, and you see this is not taking too long to update. That's why I built this, to try to accommodate basically any business's small to medium business's SKU amount, but still have something that doesn't take forever to load and it's pretty light. And then last one. So let's see, G2 don't need to lock. H2. And then here again, H2 and G2. So that should do it. Let's cross our fingers and hope these calculations stay. 1575. Yep, perfect. Okay, now let's give it a little test run. You change this to 9. Up to 2650, that's right. Perfect. Now you have dynamic flexibility for any SKU to pick what date range you're actually trying to pull your weighted average cost from. And then for this, now the P&L, you actually don't want to change these because you don't want to be changing them, making them different on each one. So in this, you can see this reference is a general summary, so that will have to match up with where this is on the positioning as a default. So we just set those equal to those, and then everything on here will reference whatever you put on that main general summary. That's it. And there we go. That should do it. I'll make this currency. So you're going to change cells in blue on this. I'll make a note there. This was one of my earlier templates where I kind of wasn't as good at explaining what to do on just the general function. So adjust cells in blue text. That's a calculation. Everything else is manually entered. Yeah. Alright. And here, this is just a specific product, so if we look at this, what's our other product? Product 4, it will change. $1.25, 18.75. And that's just if, so you don't have to scroll all the way down here. You can just pick a product from the drop down, and then you can see real quick what the net count is in the average cost total. That's weighted average cost. So now this spreadsheet is a monster. This is really going to be helpful to a lot of people. And it's just simple math plus addition, multiply, divide, but it's done in a way that makes sense for figuring out what the heck your inventory value is. And it's evergreen. It's going to go forward in time forever. It's just 3-year increments. And I can make the length, I could probably extend it out to 5 years. Even probably 10 or 15 or 20 years. It depends on how many product SKUs you have in total. You could even do it 1 year at a time. No problem. I think I've covered everything that's necessary here. And we've got instructions. So this P&L monthly is the main addition, but in the process of adding that, I realized all the updates I needed to do to the summaries, which basically was trying to figure out what the heck cost of goods sold is per item sold, and actually have a number that makes sense. So that's now done. I'm not raising the price on this. It's going to stay $45 one-time purchase. That's all I charge for this whole template. I mean, I feel like it should be a upper tier, but there's so much volume for people trying to figure out how to manage their inventory that this should be fine. $45 price. All right, that is all. I'll see you guys later. This is smarthelping.com doing a model update today.